Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Greetings, Bitcoiners.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one. Issue one, Grayscale beat the SEC. Can Bitcoin ETFs be far behind? Yes, we're still waiting, but for how much longer? As Grayscale's win over the SEC at the district court level seems to have opened the door for a retail Bitcoin ETF. As we've said before, they said it's a question of when, not if, and saying that the SEC's ruling was arbitrary and capricious means that it's time for it to go. Dan Eve, will we get a Bitcoin ETF?
Yeah, it seems like it's definitely more and more becoming a case of when and not if, right? There's since the last show, is it Franklin Templeton have also requested or put their request in or whatever it is for a spot ETF. So it seems like it's definitely going to happen, right? There's too many trillions of dollars now involved. I think someone did the sum on how many trillions, and I think it was something like $14 trillion worth of asset under management, as in firms that have now applied for spot ETFs, and that's an incredible amount. I mean, it's Bitcoin is still just teetering around just under $1 trillion, right? So this is like 14 times as much, half a trillion actually. So that's a huge amount. 28 times as much funds under management that have now been put forward their spot ETF. So it is coming right now. Whether they decide on Grayscale becomes the first one almost to kind of grace them with the long wait that they've had. I mean, what's his name? Gary Gensler still is kind of not too fond of the general crypto markets. He said recently that it's full of, again, it's rife of fraud. That's obviously not Bitcoin. The Bitcoin landscape's very vastly different to cryptocurrency. And I think everyone's beginning to see it a bit like that, right? The more so you've got everyone that's piling in when they hear about Bitcoin doing well, and they go into these other cryptocurrencies, these other shit coins, and everything gets, whenever any bad news happens about Bitcoin, whenever they say that Bitcoin's being used for nefarious purposes, this fraud around Bitcoin, FTX, they pick out all these specific companies, but it's actually the wider crypto market and not Bitcoin specifically. So I think this is all generally very good news for Bitcoin. Again, some people hate the idea of the institutions getting involved, but it does lend credence to the fact that Bitcoin is an asset class an asset that's here to stay, and crypto is obviously a still evolving asset class. It's still a wild west. But Bitcoin is going to pave the path. Maybe we will see Ethereum spot ETFs, not too long after. It seems like once Bitcoin gets the go ahead, that's probably going to open up the floodgates to a bunch of other assets. So we'll see.
Well, and that's exactly what I wanted to say, Dan. I didn't want to hurt the feelings of the Bitcoin maximalists, but then again, I'm gonna go ahead and hurt their feelings anyway. Bitcoin does all this work, all these years, all these articles, all these companies picking up the flag saying, we need an ETF, we need to be treated fairly, not just a futures ETF. And then just as soon as Bitcoin gets in the door and has its huge triumph, they're already writing about Ethereum ETFs. And while you said it might not be the larger crypto market, the top 5, the top 10 seem like a shoe-in to get their own ETF, because if you can make money trading a Bitcoin ETF, what's to say you can't make money trading an Ethereum ETF or a Litecoin ETF or, God forbid, a Ripple ETF? But yes, it might all happen. This could open the floodgates, not just for Bitcoin ETFs, but for altcoin ETFs as well. Dan, let's go to the exit question. Do you think that the Bitcoin ETFs, after the ETFs, we will wish for the old times when we were not controlled by the stock market money? Like maybe we were better off somehow. What do you think?
Well, it kind of depends, doesn't it? Like it's all going to depend on how the market's swinging, right? When the markets are doing good, people are going to rally. The fact that the institutions aping in was a good thing. being spot ETFs being approved is a good thing. As soon as the markets start to crash, everyone's going to go, oh god, those institutions bringing the price down. So the narrative's just going to change compared to how the markets are actually doing. Ultimately, though, when you're opening up the ability to buy Bitcoin to a lot more of a user base, then that's positive for Bitcoin. And as you said before, Bitcoin's that rabbit hole, that slippery slope where you learn about Bitcoin initially, and you might buy some from exchanges, but the end goal is that you end up learning about the reason why you need to hold your keys, why Bitcoin is such a solid asset, because it can't be taken away from you, unless obviously someone literally just steals your private key or puts a gun to your head. The fact is that the end goal for everyone and the education piece is hold your own keys. So, it's a slippery slope with Bitcoin. You start off maybe with a bit of a spot ETF, maybe people putting in for their 401k or their pension, whichever country you're in. And then you start to hold some, a lot along the way and put, get used to holding it, right? It is like the Lord of the Ring thing, right? They see the ring and they're kind of enticed by it, but it's not until they put the ring on where they feel that euphoria. And that's it, holding your own Bitcoin, knowing that no one can scrape it from your hands. Then that's the end goal.
I don't think the Bitcoiners can be happy with anything. I think we'll get to the new point after years and years of saying we need a Bitcoin ETF, like you're saying, Dan, so people could invest with their 401ks, with their stock market retirement funds. They could put some of it into Bitcoin, and they could have not a futures where you're betting on the future of the asset, but an actual ETF holds the underlying fund, causes demand for the fund on the market. And they just won't be satisfied. They'll say, now we're controlled by Wall Street. We shouldn't have gotten into bed with Wall Street. Bitcoin was better off before. Back in my day, the Bitcoin price could go up and down just because someone wrote an article saying that Vitalik Buterin had died, something like that. That's not going to happen. We're going to go forward. And again, we don't get a choice as to who make a Bitcoin ETF, just in the same way we don't get a choice as to which country wants to be the Bitcoin country. For a while there was El Salvador. Again, Bitcoin didn't pick, Bitcoin didn't choose. It was up to them if they wanted to adopt it, just as it's up to all these companies, whether they want to adopt Bitcoin or Ethereum or, God forbid, a Ripple ETF. So we'll see how it goes. I think we better move on to issue 2. Find the screen share button, and they practically put it off the screen. Here we go. Issue 2. Binance CEO issues a frank warning as fears swirl of an imminent Bitcoin, Ethereum, and crypto price crash. What I like about these Forbes headlines is they don't even bother with headlines anymore. They just have the first part with the news, and the second part it either says imminent Bitcoin, Ethereum, and crypto price crash or price rise. This time they're worried about a crash with Binance, perhaps in trouble again. The allegedly criminal organization founded by ICO, living the life out there without a home country, moving from country to country as if that was perfectly fine, is now under assault. CZ is saying that disappearing fiat ramps could weigh on the entire Bitcoin, Ethereum, and crypto market. Thomas Hunt, what do you think about CZ and the trouble with fiat ramps? Well, this isn't the first time we've talked about this, that Bitcoin is perfect. It's just that it's hard to get it, right? You have to take your fiat, convert it to digital money in the old ways. You had to convert it to Dishwalla or Oddwalla or some kind of thing, and then you could send it to Mt. Gox. It was difficult. For a long time, at least in the US, we've had Coinbase. It's relatively easy. And as we said in the first topic, having a Bitcoin ETF where people could take their stock market money that they're already gambling with or the future and put some of it into Bitcoin, that should help out the fiat on-ramps. As for Binance, I do think they're in trouble. They've been in trouble a long time. It seemed once again like a vaporware fly-by-night thing, but then they raised so much money in their ICO or whatever it was, allegedly, and so forth. They became a real company. They were the biggest exchange in the world, operating with all the trading pairs that you want. The only problem is they seem to be avoiding regulation, which we all know ends badly, despite how exciting it is. in the brief period where they drive around like the Dread Pirate Roberts. They always end up caught in the end, and that's probably what's going to happen to Binance. We've already seen trouble with their US branch, perhaps mixing money with the larger Binance branch. Dan, Eve, what do you think about CZ's warning about fiat ramps and perhaps the larger issue of Binance?
Well, with the current state of affairs with the SEC, it doesn't matter if you've been cozying up to the regulators like Coinbase or trying to escape them like Binance. They're still going to come after you and find something to try and get you on, it seems, you know. And Bittrex is another example of ones who tried to stay on the right side of the law, and then, you know, they've also got sued by the SEC. So it just seems like it's, we've said this before, but it's like hunting season, right, for the SEC. It's the bear market. People have lost money. They probably get pissed off. They go and complain to the regulators. The regulators are like, oh, we've got to do something because we've had an influx of complaints. Look at poor old, what's the dude who lost all that money? Who's the American footballer? What's his name from FTX?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, you know, all these famous examples of people that have lost these huge amounts of money, and then they've got to seem like they suddenly have to do something. With Binance as well, we've seen this exodus, right, of staff, the risk and compliance officer. There's been multiple others, the head of the Binance US. So it does seem like Binance is walking on shady ground at the moment. This could just be a case of people trying to reduce their stress over the next period, right? So even though Binance may not be as much trouble as like the media is making out, people just want to leave because they can't be asked to sit through all these insane audits, and they just want to get on with their job and progress. Because obviously, when you're put under scrutiny like that and you're under the spotlight, the chance of innovation gets stifled a bit more because you're spending much of your job actually, you know, providing evidence and whatever to regulators rather than trying to innovate and push forward with the business. So it's often a time where people might want to move on because they don't want to be trapped in that cycle of never-ending audit trail and evidence logging for the auditors and for legal cases. Obviously, you know, we're still kind of in the sort of sideways bear market, pre-bull market, as we've seen recently it being called, where we're floating around the 26 to 30k continuously. So everyone's saying it's obvious go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. It's an easy route to take, right? You just say both things and you're right in both ways. It just depends which way the market goes. But ultimately, I think Binance they are in a bit of trouble. I just don't think it's as bad as the everyone's making out, the doom and gloom side of things. Especially when you see how like Ripple, like the biggest ICO ever, had some victories in their legal battles recently. It seems like it's I wouldn't say much ado about nothing, but it's the usual kind of media hyperbole that's exaggerating maybe how bad things are for these companies.
I do like that it's CZ warning about the fiat on-ramps, while meanwhile he's holding the keys to the biggest warning about fiat on-ramps, the Binance trouble with the Binance US trouble, and the possible trouble with the rest of the Binance isn't in Malta, it isn't in France, it's only where I plug in my laptop. Binance is an entity. I mean, we're all into the
state of
what
mind.
is it? Remember the 5th of November. We're on to what's the film? But yeah, again, the Binance is just an idea. Binance is something out there in the world. You know, you can't fight Binance. It's also a little bit of Batman, I guess.
V for Vendetta. Is that the one you're
thinking? V for Vendetta, and Batman: The Dark Knight. You can't kill an idea. So we'll see how that goes for Binance, because I'm pretty sure they can take your servers and they can shut you down and you'd have a hard time doing business. But then again, as you said, Dan, look at Bittrex, who paid off their debt with debt tokens very questionably at the time. Maybe Ripple as well paid a giant fee. After they paid the fee, everything was fine. Maybe Binance can just pay a giant fee, make this all go away, and CZ can continue to deliver us those exciting on-ramps. Moving on to issue 3, Elon Musk said that Bitcoin payments would resume for Tesla now that it has crossed this threshold. Yes, Elon says specifically the mix of energy sources leveraged by Bitcoin miners has reached 50% sustainable. Thanks to recent Bloomberg intelligence reports, Musk says that he will allow Bitcoin payments again for Tesla. Dan, do we really care about this, or is Elon Musk just another fair weather friend who blows about in the wind? His predictions hardly mattering anymore, as you can never tell what he's going to do.
Well, we're out of the 21-22 cycle where everything Elon said about Dogecoin and Bitcoin seemed to have an impact on the markets, right? It's like almost when these famous people first start getting involved, the price does have a little swing when they do talk, and then it kind of the excitement peters out, right? But there's two things I think ultimately out of this. Now, number one is that Bloomberg are a respected news source, right? They're you have Bloomberg terminals. When I worked in Treasury, it was all about the Bloomberg terminals, and they're such a trusted source of news, right? So if they're reporting on the fact that Bitcoin mining is becoming more, or is now reached a threshold of being more than 50% renewables, then that's actually a good source, right? We've seen plenty of these articles from crypto-based news sources, which you could argue have bias, or tend to cherry pick data to make it look like Bitcoin is more renewable. But now you're seeing this in the wider world, and so it's being, it's almost like when a research paper goes out, right, and it's waiting for the other reputable teams to actually confirm that hypothesis, right, and then it becomes this it becomes official science. So we're reaching that stage now where a lot more external testing is going on and analysis is going on, rather than it being internally funded, and people are replicating these results and finding the same, which is that there is Bitcoin mining is spurring on renewables, rather than taking advantage of just those coal burning factories. But the other kind of good thing ultimately is, like back in the day, sorry, by the way, if my microphone just keeps on switching out from my mic to the MacBook. So, but the other bit of good news is the fact that I'm always a fan, as I've always been since hearing about Bitcoin in 2013. I still get excited about a new company or a company that's accepting Bitcoin. So, and we were excited in 2021, right, when it first Tesla first announced they'd accept Bitcoin. And it's because this is one of the biggest, it was one of the fastest growing companies on earth. They aren't they like the biggest, well, they are the biggest electric vehicle supplier, and that's a significant market share that's now opening up to Bitcoin payments again. So ultimately that's a positive thing, but regardless of what we sort of think about Musk and the crazy things he's done, the fact is that Tesla, a huge company like Tesla, accepting Bitcoin payments is a significant thing. Now, but what would be cool is if I was going to say SpaceX did as well, right? But wouldn't it be cool if someone could, you could pay to go for a space tourism thing with Virgin Galactic paying with Bitcoin? We need to do more moon-based stuff, right, out of the Earth atmosphere. Type stuff for showing off Bitcoin as a payment, form of payment. So yeah.
Well, I do think someone did that, Dan, with Virgin Galactic. One of the stewardess or steward on the plane back in the day allegedly paid with a lot of Bitcoin very early, and perhaps could have even held those coins. So Elon could take that, but in generally, I'm tired of Elon Musk. I've had enough. I don't like the way that Tesla accepted Bitcoin, then all got upset and coquettish. Oh, you say that Bitcoin takes power? Oh my, I'd never heard that before.
Oh,
Come on, Elon, like do a little research here. It was like Casablanca, like, I'm shocked that there's gambling going on in this establishment. Like, again, it was Bitcoin. And even at the time that they canceled Bitcoin, it still had a lot of renewables. Now, it's great that we've passed the arbitrary number of 50%, and I hope we stay above it so he doesn't have to cancel it one weekend and turn it back on the next weekend, or however arbitrary and capricious he wants to run his company. As you said, Dan, it was a great story when it came out. you can buy the futuristic self-driving electric car with Bitcoin. But then again, just like all things with Bitcoin, even the EFF back in the day, they rolled it back and they said, now you can't buy the fancy electric car with Bitcoin. So I'm a little less excited that you can buy it again. And I've also been reading all the interesting stories and leaks coming out of the new Elon Musk book, which I do have on my shelf now and I hope to get to soon. But he's quite a character, much more mercurial, I think, than people thought. Very much making up his decisions in the moment. You never know what Elon Musk is going to do. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 3,121 videos. That's more than 3 months, 16 days, and 17 hours if you had to watch it consecutively like a research project and you couldn't turn it off like a rat in a cage. We've been going for 9 years, 9 months, and 2 days since our first video. Thanks to DJ Booth for setting up this website. Moving on to issue 4, NFT-funded animated series Stoner Cats, starring Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, has been fined $1 million by the SEC. They've also agreed to destroy all of their NFTs and attempt to pay back consumers. As I'm sure you guys recall, Stoner Cats sold the typical 10,000 profile picture images, raising $8 million to make an animated series based around the Stoner Cats property. They claim that the NFTs would become more valuable, and the SEC has rung them up for being a security. It's a very strange story. Some have also disagreed with this. Some of the other commissioners on the board dissented, saying that the Stoner Cats were like Star Wars collectibles originally in the 1970s. Before they had the action figure toys, they'd actually send you a certificate. You could then claim the certificate to get the collectibles. In the same way, perhaps the NFTs were similar to that. Dan, Eve, what do you think about Stoner Cats, of all things, being declared a security by the SEC?
Oh, NFTs are an interesting thing, right? In terms of how they're this is the first. I think this is the first one that's been deemed as or threatened as a security, of at least of the ones that I know.
It's definitely a very high-profile case. You've got Kelso from that '70s show, and whatever Mia Kunis's character is. They've also been in the news quite a lot recently with the Danny Masterson story, a complete disaster there as well.
Yeah, and so this is the first, seemingly the first threat of an NFT being a security, and that's obviously going to send ripples through the NFT world. But maybe this is purely, or partly based on the fact that it sounds like they've promised profits, right? They sold the NFT as the idea that it would be an asset that is likely to appreciate in value. And the comparison, I think the comparison to the Star Wars figurines is actually a really great comparison, right? Because it's not, NFTs aren't like ICOs. They're a completely different kettle of fish, and they are really more like collectibles. And so could you say that those figurines were sold as securities? Well, no, because they weren't originally sold as these will go up in price, right? These are collector's items that will go up in price. But I'd argue that anything sold as a collector's item infers discreetly that it's likely to go up in price, right? Anything that's limited edition is like something that people deem as an asset that could go up in price. It seems like they settled it before even going to court. They just straight up said, right, we're going to do the refund, burn the assets, etc. Whether those are the only they're going to burn the assets that the company is actually holding, right? But on NFTs eternal, so surely
I think they're going to try to buy them back. I think if the consumers are dissatisfied, the company is going to offer to buy them back. I don't know the price on that. But yeah, they're going to buy them back and burn them all, I think.
Well, so this could end up being, obviously not all of those are going to get bought back. Is this going to be a scenario like where the artist dies, right, and the artwork goes up? If they're not sold back, what impact is that going to have on the price? They won't have utility, right? Or they may not have utility from the company itself. because the company can't then turn around and say, oh, you can use this to get into a special club. But you might see other kind of companies that are saying, hey, anyone with one of the few remaining stoner cats, you get access to this special party or something crazy like that, right? Maybe
I do think it's possible that collectors continue to keep them, and because of this news and notoriety, people want them even more.
yeah.
Going back to the original case and everything, although I certainly didn't invest, I did think this was one of kind of like the crown jewels of the NFT movement. You had a major Hollywood star. He was early on Bitcoin. He was early on Facebook stock. Who's to say he wasn't early, or at least in the middle of the NFTs? They raised a nice amount of money. Now, I don't know whether they were going to use that to make the show, or if they're going to make the show out of, your icon number 132 or Johnny's icon number 5573 or whatever it was. That seems like a stretch. Obviously, one would assume they'd make it out of an icon that they own. In the same way, Seth Green was working on this show with his CryptoPunk. Remember, his wallet was famously looted, and the CryptoPunk that he'd written all his stories and ideas about, because it was holding a beer can or whatever it was gone. I don't know if he ever got that back, and if he was able to create that show either. But this did seem like an up and up project. They were going to make the TV show. The TV show had collectibles. It reminded me a lot of the Gary Vee projects, where he says, oh, I'm making the new Mickey Mouse and you could own Mickey Mouse. And it seems, again, unlikely to me that he'd base a show around something he didn't own. But if he was to do that, or someone else was to come along and do that, you would own the NFT. Maybe the legal system's tough, but maybe you could prove that you own the item, the copyright. But big step backward for NFTs. Although I think it's important to note the other commissioners disagreed, saw them as collectibles, had their own defense. It wasn't a one-sided commission vote. It was like 3-2. So,
is this like the NFT equivalent event of when who was it? Like, wasn't it the boxer who tried to sell the Cobbin Hood ICO, and the kind of the few companies that really got their knuckles wrapped in 2017, right? But the companies that were endorsed by celebrities. So maybe it was the fact that celebrities were involved. It was the reason why this company was targeted specifically.
It all depends. When you're promoting something that's a security, it's very complicated. I think it was Floyd Mayweather and Paris Hilton that had early ICOs and then got in trouble for promoting them because they were investment vehicles and maybe they didn't say so or something like that. It's a very complicated thing, but yes, it does kind of tame back the whole Bitcoin, and NFTs are the wild, wild west. And you can do anything you want when we keep having verdicts like this come down and suddenly cases change. All right, let's move on to the last issue, issue 5. Again, talking about Coinbase. Why Coinbase is adding Lightning support and focusing on Bitcoin. I can only assume they've been watching this show over the last 10 years or so, and they've heard our constant pleas for Coinbase to turn back to a good website where they had Lightning support and they had Bitcoin and they recommend it first. And you don't have to worry about sending people there and they say, oh, I came back with a bunch of magic beans. You're like, did you get any Bitcoin? No, I got magic beans. It's such a disaster. Whereas it used to be a great Bitcoin only, or sometimes Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum, kind of the big three, the big five. Danny, why is Coinbase turning it around and going back and adding Lightning support?
Well, maybe this focus on this return focus on Bitcoin. I don't think it's a case of like pandering to the pressure from maxis, because a lot of them, they're probably not going to turn around and stop kicking off about the fact that Coinbase lists shitcoin. So adding Litecoin isn't gonna change their mind. Maybe this is more of a play to get them on the right side of the SEC or something, right? So they've obviously got this open lawsuit, this legal case about securities. So by putting more focus on Bitcoin, they're trying to grow that side of the market in case any kind of real ground shaking events happen from a legal perspective about holding these other assets and the staking thing that they were doing, etc. Ultimately it's great, right, that they're supporting Litecoin. It's been a long time in the works. Like we were talking about how Binance recently, they added Litecoin, oh my god, Lightning, Bitcoin Lightning, and they were very slow on the uptake initially, but the channels seem to be exploding. And maybe Coinbase is thinking that they can do a lot more micro selling using Lightning, for example, getting these micro payments out and try and build up a lot more Bitcoin traffic that way. So I think there's a number of different reasons why they might be focusing on it. Ultimately, it's good for Bitcoin. It shows that the biggest companies, or in terms of trading volume, are actually adopting Lightning, because it's been a long time in the mix. I mean, when we were go back actually, so talking about trips to space, right? When we were starting up TripKey, one of the things we wanted to do, which accepted it was one of the first, I think it was the first hotel platform that accepted Lightning payments for Bitcoin. For hotels, but we wanted to do a big giveaway, which is in some way eventually, if the company did well, which was sending someone to space, right, and paid for by Bitcoin. We were going to try and jump on that train. But yeah, it's great that these companies, so many other smaller companies, started accepting Litecoin Lightning. Oh my god, I keep on doing that. Lightning a long time ago. Vaultoro, right, was I think the first exchange to actually accept and to run Lightning. With the high risk of the early days and the sort of beta days. So ultimately it's good. It shows that the biggest companies, the exchanges and just general companies, are actually accepting Lightning and proving that it can work and proving that it can operate under huge volumes. So this is, I think, great for Lightning overall.
I do think it's another chance for us maximalists to, run a little laps and do a little gloating over here. Brian Armstrong forced to accept Lightning Network after the streaming wars. Remember, they were in favor of Bitcoin 2x, doubling the block size for no reason. They were against the UASF, the user activated soft fork, and they did not support it. They actually wanted to keep the Bitcoin Cash people on board, give them the 2x in exchange for the SegWit 2x fork, which failed. The code failed. It would have been a dead end for Bitcoin. And now they're adding Lightning support and focusing on Bitcoin. So there we go. Slam dunk for the maximalists. We've been right the whole time, and they've been wrong. Wrong.
Are they still? Is it that I see it every now and then, but are they still doing, Coinbase still doing that sneaky thing where if you go to deposit Bitcoin, it gives you a Bitcoin Cash address? It doesn't look like it. I think if you search,
I don't think they do a sneaky thing, but they do bring a warning up everywhere. They're like, this address is also used on the Bitcoin Cash network. Only send Bitcoin to this address, or only send Litecoin, or whatever it is. It's very funny to see how complicated and confusing their interface has gotten because of this address reuse problem when it's launched in Bitcoin Cash. But we're running out of time, so we're going to go to the Magic 8 Ball. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Here we go. We're asking again. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher? Here we are. Ask the Magic 8 Ball. Concentrate and ask again. Well, there we go. Concentrate and ask again. We'll try one more time for the audience. See if it's actually working, if it loads anything else. Ask again later. The ball does not want to answer to you guys. That's it. Dan, Eve, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
No, okay. So no prediction, but just a few things, right? So first of all, that I think BitInfo Charts is actually saying now that the price, the hash rate over the last 24 hours is saying it's 475 exahashes, which is huge. It's like that's a record, right? But on the actual chart itself, I'm not sure what's going on here. On the actual chart itself, it's showing it's floating around like the 45 marker, I think. But that's huge, right? We're still seeing, again, with all the mixture of bad news that we're seeing out there, we're seeing these glimmers of light, right? From Bloomberg saying that Bitcoin's now more than 50% renewables, and the hash rate increasing, for over time time, very obviously over time, trending upwards. There was also I don't know. Have you read about the F2 pool? There was a I think $500,000 Bitcoin fee that was paid. And initially, people thought it was PayPal, right? But it was actually Paxos who were like, the underlying technology that PayPal are using. But that 20 Bitcoin has now actually been returned by F2 pool, which is quite interesting. Obviously, Bitcoin's a push system. They could have just kept the mining fee, but they didn't. They decided to give it back, which is I think interesting, which is noteworthy, I think, of talking about. But my story of the week was hanging out with yourself, Tom, and going to see in London and going to see a museum, of course, and also the Book of Mormon, which again was absolutely hilarious. How's a DGE boy?
Yeah, I had a great time in London. Got to see Dan, got to see Victoria, took in the British Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and like Dan's saying, we went to Book of Mormon. It was a great time. I just got back from London. I think I'm still on London time. So that is to say, I don't know what time it is. And I had a great trip to Europe. It was great to see everybody, especially at the Majorca Bitcoin or Blockchain Conference. Everyone could check that out next year. It was a great time to hang out with all your friends from Europe. They all gather in one place. We have very sad news today. My roommate in San Francisco, Aaron Walker, passed away about a month ago. I'm told he had a heart attack at his parents' house in North Carolina. It's very sudden, very shocking. Aaron was about my age, about 42, 44. He was a great guy. He worked with me at BTC Jam and at Purse.io. Here's some images of Aaron. I don't know if the audio is going to work. Let's see. That's when we were using Bitcoin to save money at Purse. Here he is with a Bitcoin ATM at Purse. Just always a happy guy, always a smile on his face. There we are checking out the 50th Super Bowl, which was held in San Francisco. And it's just very sad. Aaron was a die-hard Tampa Bay Bucks fan. He's got his uniform on here. He wasn't happy when I call him Bills because he's a Bucks fan. But yeah, just a great guy. Aaron, always with a smile. People aren't supposed to die this young.
I'm sorry to hear, man.
You know, you know it's the Bucks. Yeah. So yeah, there he is in the group picture there with all the guys at BTC Jam. But yeah, Aaron, my friend in San Francisco, my friend from Florida, passed away far too young at like 44, something like that. So here's to Aaron Walker, and I hope he's doing good now. And it's just very sad. So thanks to everybody for watching the show. Be sure to give us a thumbs up down below. And until next time,